What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to Down to the Wire. I'm your host, Brian Costa, and today we have a fantastic episode in store for you. We're going to be breaking down all the latest from the Boston Celtics game one defeat of against the Miami Heat, as well as the Phoenix Suns collapse in Game 7 of Round 2. We'll also be getting into James Bradbury going to the Philadelphia Eagles, as well as Drew Brees' little bit of speculation going on with the future of his career. There's a little bit of murky waters there, so we'll be getting and covering that. It's going to be a great episode. First of all, though, before we get that started, I am bringing on yet another special guest to the show today. Obviously, you've seen him on the program many times before, and he has a podcast of his own. It is the Fumblerooski Podcast, and it is powered by Power 88 Dean Radio, Adam?
Power 88 and Fans Only Sports Network, two different affiliations.
So he's got many different affiliations through Dean College. He's been very involved with that and is really doing a great job over there. So without any further ado, please welcome back to the show, Mr. Adam Wright. Adam, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm going to be going to a Red Sox game in a couple of hours. The record could be better for that team, but it's always fun to go to Fenway and catch a game, go to the Cask and Flagon, get a burger. But man, I would love to discuss that Celtics loss whenever that comes up. But God, that was just ridiculous.
No, that's definitely where we'll end up beginning of the show. But before that, hopefully with going to the game tonight, just with the record, maybe you're going to get some cheaper seats. Hopefully that is in your favor tonight.
Yeah, it's so my girlfriend got me the tickets. She said they were fairly expensive because she wanted to get good seats.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess the ticket prices haven't gone down. It's the Red Sox.
Yeah, that's true.
When it comes to the Red Sox, typically it's pretty hard to get empty stands at Fenway because they're just such a popular team. Everybody loves going to Red Sox games, even if they're not playing up to standards, but I'm excited regardless.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to be talking any baseball on the show today. However, we do got
there's nothing to talk about with that team.
Yeah, no, not really. But we do have a lot of Boston sports news to talk about. Obviously starting off with the Boston Celtics, as you mentioned, Adam, and as we mentioned at the top of the show, just a brutal defeat last night to the Miami Heat, 118-107, the final. And, going into this game, we knew that Marcus Smart's availability was going to be in question. He had been dealing with a strain, I believe, in his foot. And there was there were just reports going on that he wasn't going to be available. Then all of a sudden, just the bombshell report comes out that Al Horford will be out of game 2 as he tested positive for COVID and had to enter the COVID health and safety protocols. And I'm just like, oh, geez, we're going to get killed in this game. And I was just like, they're going to be up by 30 at halftime. The Heat are. And I'm upstairs. I'm handling some things up in my room. And then all of a sudden I haven't, watched the start of the game yet. I go down and it's the, start of the second quarter and we're up by like four something points. And I was like, wow, this is incredible just as it is. I did not think we were going to be in this type of a situation. And then even going into halftime, we were up by 5 points. I think it was 34-29 at the half.
8 points.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
They were up 8 and they were up 14 at one point. They were able to get a big lead in the second quarter.
That's what it was. We were up 8 points at the half. My bad. I'm looking at the quarter by quarter breakdown, not the half breakdown. So
no worries.
I had that mistake, but we were doing very well against these guys to start off the game. And then just the third quarter rolls around and I don't know what it was, but the Miami Heat went into halftime and figured it out. Just figured out what was giving them fits. And they went out and they went on a freaking run. 39-14 run in the third quarter. Jason Tatum, just completely froze up after halftime. Going into the half, he had 21 points, which tied a career high for him in the playoffs in terms of scoring. And the rest of the game, he had 8 total points.
And I'm sorry. You want to continue?
No,
so another part that people aren't really addressing as much, the Celtics as a team, they had 16 turnovers, which is a big number in itself. However, the most eyebrow raising thing, for a lack of a better term, about it, the most concerning thing about it was guess who had 7 of those turnovers? Guess who?
Jaylen Brown, Tatum.
Jason Tatum.
Jesus.
Your star player was the guy who was puking all over himself in the third quarter. And you could see it. Every single pass he made, they were lazy, sloppy passes that he was getting over, and he was getting stolen by Jimmy Butler practically every 2 minutes. And that was a big part of what got him into that big hole. And a lot of Celtics fans use this excuse. I've made fun of it a lot. Well, they won 3 out of the 4 quarters. Well, that one quarter really, really screwed you over.
Yeah,
go ahead. It's just a stupid argument because, like, you can look at any tragedy over the course of our world's history, and we can say, well, like, for example, it's like talking to, it's like talking.
What are you gonna say? Just watch it.
It's like talking to Abe Lincoln's wife and saying,
"Oh my God,
the play was great." Besides when your husband got shot.
Jesus Christ, Adam, come on.
It was like, it's just such a stupid argument. So, like, I don't want to hear it. You lost by a fair margin, and you puked all over yourself. More namely, Jason Tatum puked all over himself.
Yeah, I mean, he nearly had as many turnovers as he did points in the second half, which is abysmal. I mean, he just did not show up in the second half. That's inexcusable for him going forward like that. I mean, I get that we were able to put together a solid fourth quarter, but that when you bury yourselves like that, you just reach a point where you can't dig out of that hole. And that's what happened with them. I mean, they tried to figure things out in the end, but they were just completely outmatched in the third quarter. And that's what decided the game. I mean, the fourth quarter was kind of just for fun at that point. I mean, there was nothing really to do at that point for them. I mean, the Heat just had to make sure that they just didn't completely give it away. And that's what they did. They were able to hold the fort and did that just fine. But Jason Tatum having only 8 points in the second half of a playoff basketball game is inexcusable. I get it. I get the fact that he has carried you throughout these playoffs, but he cannot have 8 points in the second half of a game for you. You need him to at least have, I don't know, I'd say in double-digit points. That's usually a good benchmark. But I'd say for him, in the second half of a playoff basketball game, he needs to have at least 15. I think so. I mean, especially with that mark, he has 21 going into the half. Get him those 15 and then have him go from there. You just can't have this lack of production going on. I mean, Jimmy Butler went into halftime. He was not performing as well. He understood what he needed to do, and he went out there and he scored 41 points. So he realized that he needed to go out there and perform, and he went out there and he did his job.
He shot a million free throws, which definitely played a factor. But free throws are part of the game. Look, I completely understand the not only scoring 8 points. That's definitely concerning. The way I see it with just not scoring points, you're just disappearing. You're not helping the team. When you turn the ball over 7 times, account for virtually half of your team's turnovers, you're not just not disappearing. You're actually screwing over your team. You are making your presence known in all of the wrong ways when it comes to team basketball. And I mean, the fact that all of them came in that third quarter, I mean, it went from the Celtics were up 8 points to they're down 17, and the game's practically over for the Celtics in basically a blink of an eye. That's what was more concerning for me.
Yeah. And what really stinks is that the Celtics basically had the Heat's number. They were up by 8, but it felt like a lot more. I mean, you had Peyton Pritchard nailing threes. You had Rob Williams, finishing off great dunks down low off alley-oops, and things looked like they were really gelling for this team going into half. And then it just completely fell apart, which, just really speaks to the fact that we need Marcus Smart and we need Al Horford in this series. And it shows. I mean, I have kind of been iffy on Marcus Smart. I thought that, maybe come this offseason, we should trade a guy like him and get a big man down low to battle against guys like Giannis and Embiid. But right now we need him, and we need him badly. And the same thing with Al Horford. I get that he's, a million years old, but you need him out on the court right now.
Yeah, you look at what happened 2 years ago in the bubble I remember driving home. I watched Game 7 of the East Conference semifinals against when the Celtics faced the Toronto Raptors. I was driving home after they won, and the talk show hosts on 98.5, the Sports Hub, on the radio, they were talking about how many games are the Celtics going to beat the Heat? Are they going to beat them in 5? Are they going to beat them in 6? Is it going to go 7? And then they went in and they blew their doors off.
Yeah.
And I know it went 6 games, but it was a 3-1 lead. And it was, they were kind of lucky to get that one game. And, and in the biggest part that gave me PTSD and last night brought a lot of bad memories back with Bam Adebayo. That was a mismatch a couple of years ago between him and Daniel Tice. And then you lose Al Horford for a game. You do have Rob Williams, who's grown up since then, who was serviceable, but you know,
I mean, he's more than serviceable. Rob Williams, I thought, was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, but you know, matching up against Bam Adebayo, it's just not going to go well. And for Bam, I mean, going into halftime, Stephen A. and all the guys were saying to him, we're saying on the halftime broadcast, Bam has to get it going. Bam has to get it going, and evidently he did, and really turned it around in that second half.
Like, yeah, he's still regardless, he's still a mismatch against Bam Adebayo. They needed that veteran presence in Al Horford, and it also looked like they kind of leaned on Rob Williams too much in that matchup, and he's kind of the only guy they have who can match up against Bam Adebayo. And eventually when you use a player like that who is a role player, not a star player, and lean on him too much, he's going to crack eventually. And that's what happened with Rob Williams. I noticed he was getting picked a lot. He was getting blocked. He got the crap blocked out of him a couple times by Bam. And it just didn't work out. They needed Al Horford in this game, and that did show.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, Horford has had an incredible presence throughout these playoffs. Obviously, he had like a career night against the Bucks in that one playoff game in Milwaukee. So they need him to channel some of that when he can get back. It's not likely he's going to be back for game 2, however, because based on when he entered the health and safety protocols, he's either going to be just getting out or he still will be in the protocols by game 2. So for the Celtics, what do they need to do to match up against Bam, going forward? At least in your opinion.
Well, they could double team him and go with more size, because the rest outside of Bam Adebayo, the team actually doesn't have much. The Heat don't actually have much size. They're not quite the team that they were a couple of years ago, where they just were bigger than you and they could push you around. Now they're kind of they're a good defensive team in a different way. They get a lot of steals. Victor Oladipo a couple of years ago with the Pacers, he led the league in steals. Jimmy Butler is great with that, and he's a great defensive player. If they were just to try and lock up Adebayo and let the rest of the team beat you defensively, I think that can cause it. It's just the main issue for me is Bam Adebayo, because he still, like I said, he still gives me PTSD from that from that bubble series. And he was a problem last night as well. It may not have shown in the points, but you could definitely feel his presence in that game. I believe he had 4 blocks, didn't he?
I believe so. I can check the statistics on that, but let me see. Let me go into the box score of this game. Let's see. I'm gonna have to go.
But it's something. I mean, man, like, it's Adebayo who's the problem for me, and they need to find a way to I'm more concerned about his presence on the defensive end than the on the offensive side.
Yeah, Bam had 4 blocks, and then Butler had 3.
So it was just a big time block party. And how many steals while you have the statistics up, how many steals did Jimmy Butler have? Because
4.
Every time I looked up during
he had 4 steals.
And did he lead the team in steals?
Yes.
I know did PJ Tucker get a couple?
PJ Tucker got 1, Strus got 2, and then let me see. Tyler Hero had 1 steal, and then Oladipo had 2.
Yeah. So across that whole team, they're a big steals team. They did have a lot of blocks in that game, but they're different defensively than they were a couple of years ago, because a couple of years ago they were more of like they'll just block the hell out of you. Now it's more like they'll pick you off a lot.
Yeah, I think for the Celtics too, Bam is definitely going to be an area where you're going to want to focus a lot of your time and effort. I mean, in the end, in terms of points, he only got 10 points, but he has a much bigger impact than just scoring. I mean, obviously his defensive presence is really impactful. So I would definitely say if you can try to repeat what you did in the first half against those guys, have them mismatched, have them, turning the ball over in the way that they were, then you'll be successful. But, Jimmy Butler is always going to be kind of just running at you. He's always going to be, just balling down low, and he's always, going to just kind of be like that kind of tough guy. So, that's where I think it's really going to be a matter of how they can match up against him. I think that Tatum, obviously size-wise, can do just fine against him, but they're going to have to do something a little bit different on him in game 2. I don't know necessarily what they're going to have to do, but they are going to have to change some things up. Going into, I didn't say it on my show. I said it on a friend show, Drew and Alec Chelly show, Chelly versus Chelly, went on for their final show ever at Bryant. And, we were talking about this Heat series coming up, and they said, what are your predictions for this series? And I said, I like the Celtics in this series because I never want to root against the boys, but, I originally said Celtics in 6, and I still think that's a comfortable place to be. Now, obviously, whether Smart and Horford are on the court is a different thing. I don't think if this thing goes to 7 games, I think the Heat take it in 7 just on their own court in Miami, whiteout. I think it would just go to the Heat. But for this game and for things going forward, how do you feel about the Celtics? Do you still feel confident in them throughout the rest of this series?
I still have them winning the series as well. That game definitely rose my eyebrows a lot, just mainly because of that third quarter. But it was encouraging. In as much as I really dumped on they won 3 of the 4 quarters, it is an encouraging sign that they did manage things fairly well in besides that one time where they puked all over themselves.
Yeah. It does show that they actually have the ability to battle back in games. Now, obviously they dug themselves way too deep a hole, so it just wasn't going to be enough to battle back. I mean, they scored a ton in that fourth quarter, but you can only do so much, especially when, again, Tatum only has 8 points in that second half. So, they're definitely going to have to, put something together for game 2.
Exactly. They will. They're going to they have plenty of game film now to look at that third quarter and exactly what went wrong and how they can adjust. And they also have some game film from the other 3 quarters where they can say, okay, so this was what was working. These are the adjustments that were made, and you can look at the good and the bad, and you can sort of you can game plan for that. Marcus Smart's a big time defensive presence. I believe he should be back. If he's not, then they'll have to figure it out from there. But he was a game time decision basically before this game, so I can't imagine why he wouldn't play. But don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. I'm not a team doctor. I'm not in the organization, but I still feel the Celtics have a good chance of winning this series, and I still have them winning it.
Yeah, I still like the Celtics in this series too. I think that this was an eye-opening experience for them. I think, they got maybe a little too, hot-headed after the end of the Milwaukee series, blowing the doors off the Bucks in the way that they did probably got them feeling really good. I think this is a nice reality check for them, and I still think that they can handle the Heat in this series here. I think that, they're going to have to sweep at home in these 2 games that come up, but hopefully they're able to do that. As we move forward though, there were some other big storylines across the NBA as well. While, the Celtics were able to blow off the doors off the Bucks. Obviously, the Bucks towards the end just completely choked and just did not show up in that, in that game 7. A team that kind of also did that as well was the Phoenix Suns. In their game against the Dallas Mavericks, they just completely, as you said, Adam, about the Celtics, puked all over themselves. They just got obliterated by the Dallas Mavericks in that game. And it was, although they were able to take the series to game 7, this was just a meltdown of epic proportions. Chris Paul and Devin Booker were just non-existent in this game, and it's been bad. I mean, it's been so bad. In fact, the Phoenix Suns themselves had to issue an apology because of how badly they got beat.
So
hilarious. I mean, they ended up they literally said, let's see. Yeah, we're in this together. We win together. We lose together. We fight together. And the only way we get better is together. Thank you for supporting us all this season. We look ahead to the start of a new chapter. I mean,
we're sorry we sucked this year.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. What did they say? They ended up saying, with greater success and expectation comes deeper disappointment. That's natural. We just know we all share it, and our organization won't be satisfied when we bring an NBA championship to the Valley. They wrote a whole post, and I think they had to post it twice because of just how bad they got beat. So, I mean, what was your reaction to just that entire game, between them?
So I will come out and I will be the first to say I was not a big Phoenix guy coming into this postseason. After that finals loss last year, it just put a bad taste in my mouth. I stopped believing in Devin Booker, who is their star player. And I love Chris Paul, but if he's asked to do it by himself and be the star on the team, you're just not going to go far enough. I love him. He's a very good point guard. It'll be really sad if he does not win a ring. However, if you win,
he didn't earn it there.
Right. But he's had a very good track record over his career and in postseason games, so that you could give him the benefit of the doubt. Besides that one game. However, if you win 64 games, you need to at least make the conference finals. I've seen teams for example, we can look at the 2014 Atlanta Hawks. They won 60 games. They were not as good as their record indicated. However, they still made the conference finals. Now they got their doors blown off once they got there by LeBron and Kyrie and those boys on the Cavaliers, but they still made it there.
But that just comes with the territory.
Right. But you can't just you have to at least make the conference finals. You can't lose in the second round, especially to a team that only really has Luka Doncic. Now they're a solid defensive team, but the only real offensive presence there is Luka. Now he's a very good player, good young player. He has a bright future ahead of him. But if you have that one player and he's young and you lose to that, ooh, that's a bad look.
Now, I mean, listen, Luka isn't the only good player on their team. I mean, and I know, obviously in the NBA,
star player. They have.
Jalen Brunson's a very good player, and I think that he gets overlooked a lot. And he averaged over 16 points this year. He's a great player. He had 24 points in this game, but obviously that's excusable. That's fine.
He's good.
Yeah, no, but listen, I'm gonna give Jalen Brunson his props. He's actually a very good player. What you can't have happen is when Spencer Dinwiddie 30 pieces you. That's where it gets absurd. I mean, listen, Spencer Dinwiddie, again, very above average player. He's a bench guy. And, he should be a 6 man of the year candidate. He shouldn't be 30 piecing you guys, which is what he did in that game, which led to that just absolute blowout.
Exactly. And like I said, it's Devin Booker is the player who I really have beef with on that team. Just it's the fact that you are the star player. You need to show up when it matters most. But when it comes to Devin Booker, it feels like it's the opposite. He doesn't show up when it matters.
I mean, he had 11 points in this game.
11, exactly.
That's abysmal.
And this was a bad offensive showing for the entire team. But for Devin Booker, for the rest of the team, you can kind of give him the pass. Deandre Ayton's still fairly young. Chris Paul gets the benefit of the doubt because he's had many very good showings in the postseason. He's a great established veteran, but Devin Booker, man, you are trying to be on the up and up. You are trying to be one of the rising stars in this league, and you come out and you do that. I don't care what you do over the regular season. I don't care about your points per game. If you cannot show up at the biggest stage, then you're just not a star.
No,
I hold the same standard to James Harden, who a lot of people try to call a superstar. I don't like James Harden either, but Devin Booker is well on his way to becoming something like that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think for Devin Booker, I think he's more in line with that than, he is at times, I think, tried to say that he would be like the next, iteration of Kobe Bryant. And I'm like, there's no way in hell at this point.
I hate that comparison.
But that's what people saw in him, at least from a shooting guard kind of, in terms of play style. That's where people thought his game was going to be moving more towards. It's not even close at this point. Listen, he was able to make the NBA Finals and prove that he was a great player to, elevate his team to that level. But you're not you're not in the rank of Kobe when you're doing that. 11 points is just not going to cut it. And then you mentioned Deandre Ayton, who at this point, I don't think Deandre Ayton is a draft bust, but he isn't performing to the status that he got drafted at. Obviously in this game alone, he only had 5 points, but I understand that he's still a, relatively good overall player. He averaged over 17 points this year, 10.2 rebounds, was a pretty good player. I think that, some guys are saying that he could probably earn a max contract from some teams to fill some sort of role, but I just don't think that he earned the title, that he really is that guy.
Yeah. Sure. I give him the pass because he's fairly young. He's going into, this is his 3rd season, correct?
He's 23.
It's so it's hard to be, it's like, I hold every high draft pick with a high ceiling to the same standard. If you it's very hard to be a superstar in your first 3 years in the NBA. So let's see how he pans out in these next 3 games. He's at least in these next couple seasons. He's at least proven to be a solid player, a good big man in this league. So they at least have that. But to address your,
but Adam, he's the same age as Jason Tatum. I just looked it up. Tatum is,
but Jason 24. Tatum, that's Jason Tatum.
Okay.
And he came in the league at age 19.
Okay. Yeah. But great. This guy came in the league at age 20. He was a 1st overall draft pick. A guy like Jason Tatum, that's what you're hoping to get it with a top 3 pick. Danny Ainge said, if he hadn't traded the pick, he would have taken Jason Tatum with that 1st overall pick. That's what you expect from the Phoenix Suns. And listen, you can make a case that Ayton's a great player, but I think if the Suns redo that draft, I don't think they're taking him again.
Maybe not, but I mainly want to address the comparisons to Kobe Bryant with Devin Booker. A lot of those were made sort of when he was young. He was scoring a lot from an early age. He does remind me of Kobe Bryant in his play style. He obviously is nowhere close to Kobe Bryant, but he is a volume scorer. He'll rack up the points per game. It's a lot like what Jason Tatum wants to be, even though I hate that he wants to be that, because I think his ceiling is a little higher than that, because he can be more efficient than Kobe Bryant ever was. However, I do see it with the play style, but I do think those, even with people who's tried to defend Devin Booker, those have been sort of been people have kind of backed off from that, just because everyone is starting to figure maybe Devin Booker really can't, maybe he's really not that guy anymore. But yeah.
Again, give it to Booker. He's still also 25 years old, so he has time to figure things out. But at the same time, you can't be performing like that. As the guy for your team. Jason Tatum, fell apart, and I'm ripping him for it as well. When you play like that in a especially in a do or die playoff game, that's the thing too. In this play in the game 7 for the Celtics, Tatum had how many? 23 points, which ain't great. Grant Williams carried us, but the Bucks just didn't show up in that game, so that kind of was more impactful. They need to show up in these playoff games, and Devin Booker just did not do that.
Yeah, and it's like he's just it's like, and this is where a lot of players and statistics in the NBA can kind of be misleading. Like players can average a lot of points per game, but it's because they're taking a lot of shots and they're scoring at points where it may not matter so much. And then on the big stage, that's where they really fall apart. James Harden is a big time example of this. During the regular season and some early postseason rounds, he'll rack up the points, but once it really matters, when all the chips are pushed to the center of the table, that's when he sort of falls apart.
Yeah.
And I think that's where things become very misleading in the NBA. People will say, look at the statistics, look at the stats. I don't care about that if you're just hucking up a lot of shots and you're only scoring when it doesn't matter that much.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, like there are plenty of guys like that. I don't think, I think that can definitely happen with a lot of guys like Booker, like Harden, where that can just become an effect. Trae Young can kind of have that to a certain extent, but he's a, a very good player, so he can kind of get away with it. So I don't know. It's always kind of been a bit of a give and take with me.
Right. But I do want to get back because I did want to just make that point about Devin Booker and his style of play. But DeAndre Ayton, I just want to know how long he's been in the league. About 3 years, correct?
He came in during the 2018-19 season. Yes.
18-19 season. So 3 years. And Jason Tatum, how long was he in the league? Just to put it into sort of perspective.
He came in a year earlier.
So Tatum's been in the league for 4 years.
He came in, I believe, in 17-18, if I remember that correctly. I can double check that.
Okay. So I still want to give him, because it's only been 3 years. I still want to give him the pass because Tatum has proven to be a special talent, and DeAndre Ayton has so far, if he is progressing towards that way, he's taking a lot longer than Tatum has, but I just want to see him like for maybe another year or two before I say that he's not the player that he was drafted to be, because he has proven to be at least a very good player in this league, but he's still young. I want to see with him. I want to see what he does.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to see what happens there. Obviously, the NBA playoffs have been absolutely wild so far. Before we do leave this segment, we've been asking a couple people now, Adam, what if you have to give your finals prediction right now for, just the matchup and then the team, what would you probably say is your finals matchup prediction right now?
I'm giving Celtics Warriors.
Yeah, I'm feeling that too. It just kind of feels like that's the direction it's going. I think the Warriors are going to just have their way with the Mavericks, and then I think the Celtics get it back on track.
Yeah, and I think I think it's going to be Celtics Warriors. Just the Warriors just have way too many good offensive options. They have too many players who've already been there. Luka Doncic might be one of those players who's up and coming, but he may be up and coming, but Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are already there. Draymond Green is already there. And they also have other players who are young and hungry, like Jordan Poole, and Andrew Wiggins is finally starting to be a productive player like he was supposed to be when he was first drafted. So I just like the Golden State Warriors to make the finals.
Absolutely. And it's not like the Warriors are, like just decrepit now and they can't play anymore. Like they still are, in their prime at the top of their game, which is just absolutely scary. I mean, their dynasty to me, I mean, you can make a case that it's very different, but it reminds me a lot of the Patriots dynasty at this point where obviously there are differences with everything. I think that the Patriots is more similar to the San Antonio Spurs in terms of their game plan and the way that they played, where it was a lot more fundamental, not as much star power. Not star power, but just not like a ton of athleticism was involved. It was more, like basic fundamentals is kind of what drove that team. But they had their early window when they went up against the LeBron James led Cavs, who, obviously LeBron James was the top dog at the time, similar to what the St. Louis Rams were when Brady faced them. Then the Patriots had like a couple runs after that. They went on and then acquired some big talent, like guys like Randy Moss, and went on a run with them. Obviously, the Warriors were able to win when they got their KD. But then, after 2007, what happens? 2008 comes around. Brady tears his ACL, is out. Couple years go by. They're trying to regroup, figure some things out. Similar things happened with Klay Thompson going down in the 2019 finals. Steph Curry got injured during the 1920 season. And then, we come to this point where they're back out of it. They're healthy again, and they seem to be as good as ever. So I don't know. Those are the parallels I see, and it would have to be capped off by them winning a championship. But I've just seen the parallels, and it's kind of just an interesting look that I've seen so far. The way I look at it with the Golden State Warriors dynasty is they were a dynasty for a lot of the 2010s,
And then it kind of went on pause for a couple of years because all their star players were injured. Kevin Durant left, and they kind of had to reload a little bit. And they managed. Jordan Poole has been a pleasant surprise for them, and Andrew Wiggins as well has been a surprise, as he was kind of just supposed to be like, and he is a number 3 option in that team,
which is surprising enough. I mean, he was an all-star player this year. He was an all-star starter this year, and
he's still really good.
Well, I mean, and the thing with Andrew Wiggins too is he was always, said to just be a draft bust. It was just like, man, Andrew Wiggins just sucks. Like, he just can't play. The guy's awful now, and has been an absolutely just a delight to see on the court. I mean, he's been awesome for those guys. So it's going to be, kind of an interesting little give and take to see what happens there. Obviously,
how do you think that series? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
How do you think that series goes between the Celtics and the Warriors?
I mean, I like
bias aside.
I like the Celtics size-wise, but the Warriors have been there before. And that's the only difference to me. I mean, listen, the Celtics have been, at least this core group of guys, they've been through a lot, at a young age, and they've dealt with a lot. But the Warriors have been there, and they've just seen it so many times. So I just don't know how the Celtics are going to prepare. I mean, listen, they were able to overcome the Bucks this year. They were able to sweep the Brooklyn Nets, who were just able to just really just run them down in last year. So, things can always change, but I think I would have to give the edge to the Warriors just because they have that prior experience.
Right. It's not that I don't think the Celtics can compete with the Warriors, and the Celtics certainly should, especially since they're all grown up. Their star power is all with Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown has proven to be able to hang with everybody in the Eastern Conference. And maybe a bit of it is part of some of my childhood in the 2010s when Curry was unanimous MVP and Klay Thompson was part of the Splash Bros with him and Curry and Durant. And maybe that team felt so unstoppable to the young Celtics back then. But I just think the Warriors are that's a team. That's a matchup where the Warriors will just roll and be like the Warriors of old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's my thought, is just that, can the Celtics deal with the shooting barrage that the Warriors, are known for, and can they match up with the speed and just the separation that they normally get? That's the only issue. If they can do that, then they're going to be all right. I mean, the Celtics, in that first half against the Heat, they had a lot of shots from distance, just clanking off the rim. That wouldn't be the case against the Warriors. A lot of those shots are going to be going in. So if the Celtics can battle against that, then I think they got a shot. But I just like the Warriors because of the prior experience. You got to give it to the guys that have been there before. So that's just the way I feel about that. Now, before we do to end things off, I got some topics in the NFL I want to talk with you about, Adam. Obviously, I know that's the forte of your show, so I say we go into that. Obviously, just about over an hour ago, the news broke that cornerback James Bradbury, former New York Giants corner himself, is going to the Philadelphia Eagles on a 1-year, $10 million contract. Obviously, very big move there. What is the latest do you know about that, Adam?
So it was a 1-year, $10 million deal. Apparently, a lot of teams were in on James Bradbury, but they were kind of scared away by the in attempting to trade him. They were kind of scared away by the Giants standards for what the restructure would be, because obviously they didn't want to pay him that much. And so this deal, it's a short-term deal, and only, I think, about $7.5 million is guaranteed. But so this Eagles team they have now paired James Bradbury with Darius Slay, who's already an all-pro level corner. And in the draft, they used one of their first round picks to flip for AJ Brown after failing to land Jamison Williams. And they went out and they got a big man in the interior of that defensive line in Jordan Davis. And you look at this team, and this roster all around it has talent, and all they need is for Jalen Hurts to pan out, and you have potentially a dark horse team in this AFC.
Oh, you mean NFC?
Excuse me, NFC. Yeah.
Yeah.
NFC.
I think you said AFC, and I know that was probably just a Freudian slip on your part, but
that was on accident.
But something that's interesting to me is there's kind of a parallel between this Eagles team and what they're doing for Jalen Hurts and the Dolphins and what they're doing for Tua Tagovailoa, where they got him the Dolphins and the Eagles both got their quarterbacks who have, kind of had a tough start in their new cities. Jalen Hurts has been questioned about, how much he can do a quarterback. And obviously Tua has gotten that speculation as well. And then you compare that to them getting, two really, amazing star wide receivers. The Eagles get AJ Brown, the Dolphins obviously get Tyreek Hill, and now redoing the defense. The Dolphins have always been trying to re-up there, and now with the Eagles getting Bradbury, that's just an incredible addition for this team. With Philly now, they're really molding themselves into that contender type, especially with the NFC East being as weak as it is. So at this point right here, how much faith do you have in Jalen Hurts that he's going to be able to get this thing done?
So I've always been on board with what the Dolphins and what the Eagles. That was a great parallel. Actually, I never thought about it that way, but I have actually talked about both of them separately in the same manner. But I have been on board with it. But one concern that that's starting to creep into my head about both teams is because both players have been able to work with the rosters that they previously had somewhat in a serviceable manner. What if the talent around them is so good that it masks what they truly are, and it turns out maybe this team is fooled into thinking this kid is for real, and maybe in a few years down the road when this team doesn't have quite as much talent, then it all falls apart and it turns out they committed to the wrong guy. And there's a lot of examples of it. For example, Dak Prescott on their division rival, the Dallas Cowboys, he's a player where if he has the talent around him, he can play as good as any quarterback out there. But when he doesn't have the talent, he's less than satisfactory. And I know a lot of quarterbacks, you can say the same thing about where they're not as good. That's a no-brainer. However, most quarterbacks are at least able to be, if any great quarterbacks, at least able to work with what they have. And with Jalen Hurts, I fear that if he can't play, he might still be able to produce with this roster because it's just foolproof.
Yeah, I mean, that's a concern, which I think is valid. But at the same time, I think as a team, you owe it to yourself to, they went out and they got Jalen Hurts. They devoted the draft pick to him. They said, all right, this is the guy we're going to go get. We're going to, work this guy into our system. And, we want to give him a chance to perform. If he's performing with absolute nobodies out there, and I know obviously he had Devontae Smith last year, which isn't an absolute nobody, and same thing with Tua. I know that, he had Jalen Waddle last year as well, but
we'll just say imperfect. Like it was an imperfect roster. It wasn't a bad roster.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily a bad roster. And obviously if you put a guy like Pat Mahomes on that roster, he's going to thrive. But at the same time, when you have a young quarterback who has had some difficulties, you owe it to yourself as a team to be like, all right, we want to at least see, if we implement this guy into our system and, really work him into our scheme, can this work with our quarterback? Because it's going to be a lot more work to probably go out there and have to scout a new quarterback and find a new guy than it is to maybe, put some guys around him and say, all right, we have the system in place. Can this work? If not, all right, we did everything we could. And at that point, it justifies the fact that you really, that you did it. Cause I mean, having to just, plug and place, quarterback after quarterback, that's a very difficult thing to do. Obviously it's only one, obviously you're only changing one position as opposed to maybe 3 or 4, but every quarterback is different. They demand different things. They have different, play styles, obviously. So it's a much more difficult thing to have to do that rather than saying, all right, we got you some wide receiver help. We got you some tight end help. We're going to shore up the running back game. By doing that, you're really going to get a chance to see, all right, if Jalen Hurts can't perform with these guys, then you dump him. And if he can perform with these guys and not without any star talent, it's like, all right, we have a guy that, obviously Tom Brady got these, he always was called this by Max Kellerman, but all right, we got a system guy. All right, we got a guy who actually can perform in a system. And obviously I'm not calling Brady a system quarterback. Obviously that's, take that as you will. But It's like, all right, we have a guy that we put some guys around him. He's going to perform. You know what that's called? That's just being called a good front office, a good general manager. I mean, the fact that you're willing to back up your guy and actually, given pieces to work with, that just shows that you care about the guy about the guy you drafted.
I agree with that. Of course. That, like I said, the only concern that I have is, because this appears to be their plan, that because they punted one of their draft picks into next draft class, which is presumably a much better quarterback draft.
I mean, it's got to be. I mean, it's got to be after this one was just so putrid.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, it'll be relative to this draft. Any draft is a quarterback draft.
Exactly.
But either way, there's a couple quarterbacks in that draft that people are really, really high on. They punted one of their draft picks into next year, and it looks like they're going to armor this roster around Jalen Hurts to say, if you can't do it, then we're just going to move on, because we have two first round picks in next year's draft to address the quarterback position. But if he performs and it turns out it's mainly just fool's gold, then they're gonna commit those first round draft picks in other positions. In a few years down the road, when this roster isn't quite as good, then he's not going. It turns out he actually couldn't play after all. And looking at the current roster that they have, maybe there'll be a time on the big stage where he needs to perform and he doesn't, and they're going to say, well, he still played well during the regular season, and they're going to say, well, and it turns out they'll fool themselves into thinking they had the right guy when they actually didn't.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that the Eagles are doing the most. They're showing that they care about Jalen Hurts and that they want him to be in a successful position, that they're not just completely abandoning ship with him. So it shows that they have some semblance of control right now in the front office, which for a while they did not. I mean, when things were falling apart there after the end of that Super Bowl run, like in those years after, it was bad. And people wanted that entire franchise just gutted to the core because of how toxic it became. So it looks like they're caring about the guy that they have behind center right now. And I think that they're going to be in a good position moving forward. Obviously, someone who's maybe in a good position moving forward, someone who's not in a good position moving forward is Drew Brees. This has become a very interesting situation. And to be honest with you, I think it's just a bunch of bull crap. I think Drew Brees is just trying to have some fun with the media. And it was because when did he say this? He said this on May 15th. So this was what, Sunday that he said this on? He said this on Sunday. And
around that time. Yeah.
Yeah. So on Sunday, reports come out that Drew Brees had reportedly been let go from his job at NBC, and that he was just going to be, having to go elsewhere. There were talks that CBS was going to maybe try to pick him up. Other networks were going to go after him as well. Maybe he was going to go to Peacock, go to like Amazon, do something like that, become a main guy on one of these new networks. But the original report was that Drew Brees is going to be gone from one of these networks. And I was like, all right, I really didn't think anything of it, because I was like, you know what, that desk of guys, have you seen like how big the desk of just like the names that they've gotten at on that like desk in like the commercial breaks has gotten? There's way too many guys at that table now
for NBC Sports.
Yeah, it's gotten way too big.
I agree.
I understand that they're trying to be like, well, we got this guy and now we got this guy and now we're adding Drew Brees in the mix. But at a certain point, I'm like, all right, I can only take so much. Like I can only have it go from like Drew Brees to like so-and-so to like, eventually you just kind of lose focus after a while.
Look, I don't really care who's there as long as there's good sports analysis. And the reports were that he was based on the ratings, he was unsatisfactory with his work as an analyst. And my take on this whole thing is how, I think we need to show a little more sympathy to players who become sports analysts who don't perform quite up to standards, especially since Tony Romo came in and has been borderline legendary with what he's been doing. But these athletes, they're recruited to be on TV for their names. They're not recruited because of their qualification on TV and how they make their points. They may have great knowledge of the sport, but that doesn't mean they'll be able to make the point and be able to articulate what they want to get out of their head to you on TV cleanly. Like, for example, I know a lot of people get on Booger McFarland, sometimes rightfully so, but he's not known for he's well known for his football career, not for being on ESPN to be a great commentator. Same with Drew Brees, and same with anybody else. We can talk about Rob Gronkowski. He was not quite up to snuff. However, he was a great tight end, one of the best tight ends ever. And, you know, Brian, you and I both know what we do is incredibly hard. It's much harder than you might think. And to sit here and try to say, like, you know, and like we're working very hard to do what we're doing, and like to do that at a level where everybody is sort of, you know, watching you. That's incredibly hard, especially for an athlete who's only recruited because of their name, which was in a profession that has nothing to do with speaking behind a camera.
No, yeah. I mean, listen, it's a difficult task. And I mean, it's why some guys just completely just flame out. I mean, I think Dan Marino, was one of those guys. I mean, you know, Dan Marino, obviously legendary quarterback with the Dolphins, was just an all-time great guy. But you know, he got his foot in the analyst business and just was a complete flop. I mean, I remember there's like one, I wouldn't call it a highlight, but there's one just really famous clip of him. You know, he's trying to give a take and he stumbles on his word and he gets so pissed that he just slams the desk down like in the middle of the take. And all the guys look around him and are just like, yo, is this dude okay? Like, he got so pissed that he just slams the desk down. And it was like a year after his playing career. So some guys just can't do it. And I'm not saying that I can do it any better than any of those guys. Like, it takes a certain level of skill to get in that position and give your take and give it effectively. So it's not an easy game to be in. And I think that Drew Brees did a just fine job, but you know, it's a difficult game to be in. And I mean, that's why I have some speculation as to how Tom Brady's going to do when he ends up stepping away from football and getting into the commentating business with Fox. I don't necessarily think that he's going to be all too great with it. I think that he could possibly struggle. I think that, you know, he's so great and he understands football to just to a different level that if he tries to break it down, some guys are going to be like, dude, that makes no sense. It makes sense for you because you've played football this time and you understand things just on a different level. But to the average guy, it may not compute.
It's like that one clip that went viral where that reporter was interviewing Cooper Kupp and like what went into that play. And he went into like in so far in depth in football terms that he even lost me.
Oh, which was awesome.
I mean,
it was awesome, but yeah, no, I'm a diehard football fan. And I mean, like, I don't even like, there might be some football players that might've been like, yo, what is this dude saying? Like, oh my God. I mean, he basically read out the playbook scheme. Like he went full on with that. I was like, that is crazy. So,
and it's great that he has that type of knowledge. Just, I'd love to see it dumbed down to the point where, you know, the average football fan might understand. And I understood parts of it because you and I have above average knowledge in football. At least we like to think we do. But like, I mean, you got to be able to get your message out to all these people, and not everybody's going to know all this about football.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, that's just what you're going to end up seeing. So obviously this whole saga with Drew Brees eventually, led to him tweeting out, despite speculation from the media about my future this fall, I am currently undecided. I may work for NBC. I may play football again. I may focus on business and philanthropy. I may train for the pickleball tour, senior golf tour, coach my kids, or all of the above. I'll let you know, which I think was just Drew Brees just flipping the bird to everyone and just saying, get out of my life. You don't know me. Leave me the hell alone, which I actually kind of like. He's just like, listen, let me have my peace and I'll figure out what I'm doing with my life. Like, don't, come after me like that. So I kind of like that. Now, Drew Brees is around what is he now? 43, 44 years old. I don't think that he's coming back to football, and I don't think he's going back to the New Orleans Saints. So
hey, Tom Brady's 45.
Yeah, but listen, Tom Brady retired for,
it was like less than 2 months.
Yeah, it was like significantly less than any of, like, it was so like not even like,
yeah,
like
I'm joking about that, of course, but
no, I know, but like I don't even think about Tom Brady now like being retired at this point. Like it doesn't even like register in my mind anymore. I mean, I know I did a whole special on it. Like I was making posts left and right, was sharing things. I was like, oh my God, this is like the end times. But that just evidently never happened. And like he is back playing football. Drew Brees has been away now for 2 years. I mean, it's just not happening with him coming back at this point.
Yeah, and like a lot of people try to draw that comparison to Tom Brady, that hey, he played up to the age around that Drew Brees is at. Well, number one, Tom Brady never really retired. Never really retired. He retired over the offseason and then said, you know what, never mind. And also,
so he
by the end of Drew Brees' career, he was not playing. His career, his arm was hanging by a thread. He could barely throw the ball. He was not like he was in his prime. And Tom Brady's just a different animal. He's beating Father Time.
No, yeah. But, I mean, listen, Tom Brady is still performing at an elite level. He, in that last game that he had against the Rams, he looked, like he was in his prime. It looks like I was watching a vintage Tom Brady football game when he was like leading that team back down 27-3 and almost doing it despite
these past 2 years. He's been incredible. I thought he could. I thought he could play well, and we are getting off topic, but like 82 regular season touchdowns in 2 years. That's incredible for a guy in his mid-40s.
No, I mean, he's been playing incredible, but to tie back to Drew Brees just wasn't that. I mean, he was, he's obviously able to lead the Saints to the playoffs, obviously, won them the division in the year that Brady went on to go win the Super Bowl. But, in that game, that last game that he had was just atrocious. I think he had 3 picks, just was not the same guy anymore. I was talking about Dan Marino and guys adjusting to the broadcast booth, but Dan Marino obviously, very famously had a great career, but just as much so had a terrible last game. I think he faced the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think it was in the 1999 or like going into the 2000 season, and was just abysmal. He got benched. It got so bad with him. I mean, Dan Marino got benched in his last game because he was playing so poorly. And then they brought him out for like a final drive and was like, hey, just like, this is a little hoorah for you. So here you go. That's kind of, yeah. I mean, well,
even though he ended with a ring, but he was a game manager when he was really actually able to help them.
But at least he ended with a ring. Like Dan Marino went out in like the wild card round. It was bad. And but like Drew Brees,
those Dolphins teams were terrible.
Okay, but Drew Brees though in this game was just in his last game against the Bucs was atrocious. Like he just did not have it anymore, and I don't see where there'd be any chance that he would come back and even be close to the guy he was.
Yeah, and I do agree with you on that. I do want to come to Brees' defense in his playing career a little bit and say, he definitely wasn't what he was when he was in his prime, but he was able to have a pretty good season. And while it didn't end too well, he wasn't as bad as a Peyton Manning or a Dan Marino. Like he had a pretty solid season in his final year. In fact, there was a point where him and Brady were going back and forth in the all-time touchdown race. Before Brady left in the dust.
Well, that's because Brees got hurt, and then once Brees got hurt, it was over.
Right, he was still able to play, kind of, but after that. But I do agree with you. He was not the same player, and if he came back, he'd be even worse.
Yeah, no, he would it would be abysmal. And at this point with the Saints, they don't have Sean Payton anymore. They don't have his guy. It's Jameis Winston's team now, which is something I would never imagine saying about a football team in the NFL nowadays. But it's Jameis Winston's football team, so they're going to roll with him and they're going to go from there. But obviously,
that team might be able to play too.
Yeah, they
Jarvis
might be.
Landry about a week ago.
Yeah, that was a pretty solid pickup there. So they're going to make some noise over there, and it's going to be pretty interesting showing for them. But obviously, Adam, we've had a great conversation today, talked about a bunch of stuff, but unfortunately, we are now down to the wire, which means that we're going to wrap up what we talked about in the episode today and get you guys on with the rest of your day. So obviously, we welcomed on Adam Wright to the show, host of the Fumblerooski Podcast. Adam, thank you for coming on again, man. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure, man. I always enjoy having conversation with you, talking in depth about some sports.
Absolutely, man. So obviously to start things off in the show today, talking in depth, we talked in depth about the Celtics loss to the Miami Heat in game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. After that, we talked about the Suns collapse in game 7 of round 2. And then we switched things up into the NFL where we talked about James Bradbury going to the Philadelphia Eagles on a 1-year, $10 million contract. And finally wrapped things up by discussing Drew Brees's tweet drawing some speculation about, the return to football, maybe a pickleball tour, senior golf tour. So things were kind of thrown about in all sorts of speculation. But Adam, before we go, just want to do some quick shout outs. If you want to shout out anything personally for yourself, I'll give you a chance to do that right now.
Yeah, go check out the Fumblerooski podcast. We specialize in football talk, but we have been sort of branching out to other sports. So if you want to be a guest on our show and sort of talk whatever's on your mind, anything sports related. I mean, we could go that's not sports related, but you can talk about whatever the hell you want to talk about on our show when you are a guest, and you get to run your own segment. But we would love to try and branch off to other sports. And we do talk a lot of football. So if you guys want to come on for that, definitely go check out our podcast, Fumblerooski Podcast. Go check it out anywhere. We're on all platforms, and we're also on Instagram, Fumblerooski_podcast.
Absolutely. And to follow Down to the Wire, you can follow us on any streaming platform, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. We also have the video stream to this podcast available on YouTube, and all of the links can be found in the bio of our Instagram page, which is at down.tothewire. Again, at down.tothewire on Instagram. When we return from this summer break, I will be back in the Koffler Center at Bryant University, and you'll be listening to us on 88.7 HD2 Smithfield, Providence. Thank you again for listening to the show. And from Down to the Wire, I'm Brian Costa.
I'm Adam Wright.
And we hope you guys have a great day. Take care and peace out.